What is that core knowledge set, core skill set that enables you to have those conversations, besides the confidence to have them? Because that is intimidating when you're new to meet with the CEO of a big company.
It doesn't have to be overly complicated. So a diamond standard for me that I try to uphold is know the customer experience, because I'm ultimately B2B to C. That's the solution I'm selling. So, this is going to be different if you are B2B, but it was more important that I was coming from a place that I know how to fix your problem because I'm the one receiving the problem.
Hi, friends. Welcome to the Sales Enablement Podcast. I'm your host, Andy Paul. Now, that was Brandon Fluharty. Brandon's Vice President of Strategic Account Solutions at LivePerson. And I have to tell you, he's one of the best salespeople I've ever known or had the pleasure to work with. And he's joining me on this episode of Sales Enablement, episode 766, to talk about how to win big deals. Now, that's what Brandon does. He wins really big deals with Fortune 50 type companies, and he does it pretty quickly. So we're going to dig into what he does to be successful. We're going to get into his selling process and how he moves deals through his pipeline. And we're going to talk about Brandon, a SaaS seller at the very top of his game. We're going to talk about the steps he takes and the investment he makes of his time and efforts to keep getting better, to keep improving. Now, before we get to Brandon, I want to let you know that the whole team of people who work to produce this podcast are incredibly grateful for all of you who support us by listening to the show, telling your friends, sharing it on social media, and most importantly, subscribing to the show and giving us your feedback in the form of a rating and review. So thank you very much. All right, let's jump into it. Brandon, welcome to the show.
Hey, Andy. Thanks for having me.
That's my pleasure. It's great to have you here. So you're joining us from where today?
I am joining you from my home office here in Sarasota, Florida.
Sarasota, Florida. So you're not out these days, since we're recording this during a time when everybody's sort of working from home, as we say.
Yeah.
So you're not out enjoying kite surfing or any of those other things that take place in Sarasota. Yeah,
not surfing or on the bike as I normally would be, and certainly not on a plane as I would especially be at this time, trying to hunt down the new business.
Yeah. I'm on a plane quite a bit as well too. And that's been an adjustment. There's been several adjustments, right, in this period. One
Absolutely.
is obviously you and I share some of these adjustments. One is we're not out bicycling; we're bicycling inside. Mm-hmm. Two is we're not able to watch Liverpool play football.
That's right. Yeah.
And three is we're not traveling as much.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. So we have to adapt and trying to make a positive out of it and trying to just keep things in perspective. Both you and I have been successful sellers. I am actively selling. So coming off of a monster 2019 year, which I was very proud of, but understanding that circumstances can be a lot worse. My wife actually is a nurse, and I'm selfishly grateful that she is not a practicing nurse right now. She graduated nursing school in New York City, where we met, and we're just extremely grateful that she's not in that environment right now. But I could only imagine what healthcare workers are going through right now, or if you've been furloughed as an employee. So certainly there are folks who are being hit very hard. So trying to keep things in perspective, be grateful, try to remind myself, write down what I'm grateful of, and try to use this time to kind of get back to some of the basics. Mm-hmm. And I've been writing as much as I can each morning, getting to some healthy habits like meditating and getting on the indoor bike trainer and trying to get a good workout in. But also, trying to use this downtime to improve my skills.
Sure.
Where there were gaps, can I take time and learn, some new skills? What are some certifications that I can take on and learn a little bit more about my industry, which revolves around artificial intelligence.
Let's explore something. So you use the term. I mean, here you're a seller, SaaS world, at the top of your game. You and I know each other from before this call. Mm-hmm. Monster year. You called it downtime. So Yeah, a lot of times you look out at LinkedIn these days and it's, come on, let's keep going. Let's push, 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 push. Don't be wusses. Let's go do this. And it's like,
Yeah.
no, some of that may change from business to business, but so you use the term downtime. What's that mean for you?
Yeah, so it's just sort of reevaluating, kind of coming down to the foundation and realizing that no one knows what's going to happen this year. Knowing that everything has changed and the whole world is going through this. So a lot of I pursue strategic accounts. So Fortune 10 level businesses who are going to get hit hard in Q2 and Q3.
Well, but they are. So you still engage with them, though? I mean, that's what I meant with downtime. I mean, you still, how are you following up with your customers, your existing prospects that were in the pipeline?
Yeah.
Big accounts.
Yeah. And I focus on net new logo acquisitions. So unfortunately, I don't have relationships that I can sort of lean back on unless they were in advanced sales stages. And coming off of a big year, understandably, the pipeline was thin coming into 2020. And so I had ambitious targets, continuing the momentum of 2019. Obviously, this macro event, this black swan event has changed and upended everything for everyone.
Mm-hmm.
So I've tried to adopt a framework, very, very simple framework under these uncertain times, which is just empathize, humanize, and then materialize. And understanding that, a lot of these early stage sales pursuits, a lot of them have just completely put things on hiatus. And no new initiatives are going to be evaluated at this time. Obviously, making it much more challenging for someone like myself to kind of come in and continue conversations, build the relationship, or in some, even in the hospitality space, some large brands have furloughed corporate contacts. So there's one major brand who has completely furloughed an entire team I met with in December, and understandably, there's really nothing to talk about with them. So, my strategy is kind of working with the marketing team, working with strategic SDR.
Working with your marketing team.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And how can we strike the right tone? And again, it's kind of going back to, okay, well, how do we empathize and try to put ourselves in their shoes and understand their situation? How do we humanize the new climate that we're in, understanding that the whole family is trying to work in a very busy household. It's hair on fire, crisis management type of thing. How can you come in with the right tone? But I think the third element is the important one, is for what would be a new provider, a new vendor for the logos that I'm pursuing, is trying to actually show them in a very succinct way, hey, we've actually done some work. We've done some homework. I've done a gap analysis, and very clearly and quickly, here's where we can provide immediate relief. So those have actually proven to be, again, this isn't an approach that you can just spray and pray and put out there to everyone. You've got to be selective, which I already am with strategic account pursuits, but not giving up either, right?
No, but it sounds like what you're doing is dialing back the ask, right? Here's something we know that provides immediate relief for a solution you may have that may or not be caused by what the situation we're in.
Right.
But irrespective of that, it makes sense to really consider.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, this event has luckily benefited a company like ours. I mean, we've seen 90% boost in the messages coming onto our platform. So we're a conversational platform, and we help brands, kind of shift those conversations between their consumers from voice calls and email and some of these old legacy channels, even web chat, and move that into more inherent natural behavior of consumers, which is just messaging. Mm-hmm. And so we've seen a huge spike. Obviously, that's our current client base, but how do we take some of those learnings over to net new prospects who may not even really have a complete understanding of what we do at our company. So that's the approach, and it has accelerated this crisis. It has accelerated what we knew was going to be the new normal, anyways. And I know that is a cliche tagline right now, the new normal. But we were talking about a new normal before this crisis hit. This has just accelerated that, which is when you look at long hold times. We're hearing like day long hold times. Like,
for people calling customer service and so on, and we'll get into how you guys serve that. But those are every financial institution website or travel website, any place you go, that message is right at the top of the page.
Right.
Be prepared.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's get back and talk about you a little bit, because we want to tell people. So, okay, here's somebody, you're at the top of your game in the SaaS business, selling to mega accounts, but you start off trying to be a pro soccer player. I know we share this passion for soccer, but so what was that about?
So I got into soccer. I mean, I've been playing my whole life, but really seriously got into soccer in my teenage years, and throughout high school, playing in youth leagues, and it was a passion and a sole focus of mine throughout my teenage years, and had the opportunity to then go on and play in college, and then have the opportunity early on to actually go train in Europe as essentially a trainee with a professional soccer club in Romania. And
Romania?
Yeah, off the beaten path for sure.
Yeah, so how'd you get hooked up with somebody in Romania?
So between my freshman and sophomore years in college, I went to a training camp that a group here in the States put together for youth players and serious players, and we trained with professional clubs in Romania. And I was sort of scouted and identified early on and invited to come and train. I didn't want to sign any contracts because I didn't want to lose my college eligibility. But I was essentially, brought on with a first division professional club, and trained with them as if I was one of their players, and got to participate in friendlies and matches and things like that, with the goal of signing a contract, because as you are well aware of soccer and world football, that if you don't start your career as a teenager and starting your professional career at 16, 17, you're sort of behind the curve. And that was the case for me, kind of going over there at 19, 20. I was behind the curve as an American. So I went in full force. Like, that was my committed focus, with the intent of becoming a professional soccer player. Unfortunately, ran into some injury issues and had to kind of reevaluate my future. So again, luckily, I didn't sign any professional agreements, so I could maintain my college eligibility. Ended up, recouping and recovering from that injury, and went back to school and finished up in New York, and that's what took me to New York City ultimately as a young adult, and wasn't intentionally looking to get into sales, but my first career move was parlaying my expertise in soccer, and I started with a soccer training startup, an education startup in Long Island, and our focus was creating a system of training youth players, particularly 5 to 12-year-olds, using the expertise of American-based players who'd played collegiately or professionally. And we kind of created this unique system that we were hoping to take elsewhere. But ultimately, the company was sold. But I went into it with just the pursuit of, hey, I love soccer. I'm not going to be a professional player, but the best next thing is to be a trainer or a coach and help the youth. But I kind of cut my entrepreneurial teeth and sales teeth there. And really, was the blossoming of my sales career.
Yeah, well, it all starts somewhere, right? So,
Exactly. Yeah.
so what was the first professional sales job?
Yeah. So really from there with that organization, I sold personalized training packages, and again, kind of cut my teeth. The company, the startup, was eventually sold to a larger organization. From there, I moved from Long Island, working in Long Island to moving and working in the city in Manhattan, and that was really a core sales job. So you'll see another passion of mine is music and DJing. So I worked with another startup that was focused on DJ education as well as concierge music marketing programs, Scratch Music out of New York. And it was selling into major brands like Gucci, Crunch Fitness, Beaches and Sandals Resorts, and what we Royal Caribbean Cruise Lines. What we did was we leveraged the power of the DJ to customize music programs for background music and or DJ programs where we could lift revenue in retail spaces or spaces on the cruise ship through really engaging music. And I sold, essentially those services to those major brands.
So, Muzak.
Yeah, we competed with Muzak, but trying to bring some sexiness to it using a cool professional DJ.
Yeah,
mixing that and customizing that music. But yeah, that was essentially it.
Yeah, at one point we were delivering Muzak type services over satellite networks I sold. So yeah,
yeah.
Know that business well.
Yeah.
So okay, so keep going then. I mean, so that was getting some sort of taste of selling to some larger accounts and so on.
Exactly. Yeah. So that was really my true foray into professional sales. And then I met my to-be wife. We met in New York City. And like it said, she was finishing up nursing school. She was a former fashion designer, kind of going through a transition herself, former fashion designer to becoming a nurse. Mm-hmm. And when we met, she had lived in New York City for a long time. I lived in New York City for a long time. We developed a really serious relationship, and I think we'd figured, hey, enough of New York City. It's a very expensive place to live at the time, and
hasn't changed.
It hasn't changed, but yeah, our circumstances.
I can vouch for that.
Yeah, our circumstances have changed a bit, but at the time, it was a place where we were looking to get more serious, settle down a bit, take the next stages in our relationship. So we had the opportunity to move to Sarasota, Florida, where she grew up, and this was back in 2008. And another black swan event, the financial crisis hit. We had never owned a home, so at that time, it was actually all upside opportunity for someone like me. A couple of years into sales at that point. We looked at moving here, honestly, as a temporary thing, but it became permanent with the ability to buy our first home at a great time. And, I really had nothing to lose. So sales was all upside for me. So sort of transitioned from kind of doing the big account stuff to actually SMB sales. And that actually was a great education as well. Because then it was more of the grind. It was kind of creating systems, like how could I bring sophistication to SMB sales?
What were you selling?
So it did a few things. Worked for media companies, and then eventually got into television sales, and then advertising sales, and then digital media.
Got it.
Yeah. And then, just climb the ranks, SMB to mid-market to eventually enterprise to then strategic accounts over the past 10, 11 years.
So what was the moment in your career where there was sort of this, where it started making sense, right? There's sort of this aha moment, right? Yeah. I mean, I think everybody sort of has it at some point where it's like, okay, now I get it, right? Yeah. It's sort of, I think, to professional athlete, they could be highly rated in college, but it's different when you get into the pros, and sometimes it takes a couple of years for you to sort of like, oh, okay, now the game's slowing down, everything's making sense. What was that for you?
Yeah, I would say it was when I made that transition to the broadcast television sales. That's when things just started to click. I had maybe 4 or 5 years under my belt in professional sales, and it was the moment I started believing in myself because others were believing in me.
Mm-hmm.
I was surpassing quota. I was getting recognition. I was being recruited when I wasn't actively looking. So it was sort of, I've even as a soccer player, and I always struggled with confidence issues. It was always a mental thing for me, not necessarily, the physical, technical, or tactical
Mm-hmm.
side of the game. So that I think was a big aha moment where I was being recognized, and then that further instilled confidence in myself to just continue to push and do my thing. And then, kind of first time of entering 6-figure earnings, and that belief that that should never go below that,
Mm-hmm.
and only go above. So yeah, that was that was happening around 2009, 2010, where I started to kind of make that transition. And then I just felt like I had the platform to continue to rise the ranks and or outgrowing smaller companies and moving into larger companies who worked with really large accounts and logos. And that's
so you're deliberate in your career path and sort of saying, okay, what I'm doing here is going to set me up because I want to go sell bigger accounts for a bigger company. And you made those transitions, and you're looking at your own development, your own skill set.
Mm-hmm.
Were you ready, or said, I'm coming here because I want to learn these things?
Yeah. I would like to think that it was purely deliberate. I wouldn't say it was 100% deliberate. I would say it's 80% deliberate and 20%, good timing as well. So kind of fast forward to past couple of years and what landed me ultimately to my current role at LivePerson. Again, I wasn't actively looking to leave the enterprise sales role that I was in. I was with a late stage startup out of San Francisco, and I was recruited. But what I did do was I kept a short list of
Mm-hmm.
companies that on one side of companies I would be willing to make that move for, or industries. And LivePerson was on the industry list of artificial intelligence and automation and this new world of conversational commerce. And then it was, I'm a big believer in, I had my list of, hey, here's what I would want from a sales environment. Not too big of a company, not too small of a company, all those various factors. And ultimately, though, at the top of that list are the people, the leaders that I would be working with and for. And that's ultimately what made me make that move. And it's certainly been a great past 2.5 years at LivePerson.
Well, if you look back on not just the LivePerson experience, but prior to that, as you're sort of growing and
Mm-hmm.
you're still comparatively early in your career, and I love this question because it always gets such interesting answers. It's like, okay, who taught you how to sell big accounts? Who taught you, some of the most important lessons? I mean, I look back at my own career as actually, it was a mentor and it was my customers.
Mm-hmm.
I'm interested in what it was for you.
Yeah, I wish I could look back and say, I got a formal MBA in selling strategic accounts. I just don't think it exists out there.
No.
So
it wouldn't be any good. It wouldn't be any good if it existed anyway.
Yeah, so. Right. So I think it's very similar to you. It's you learn by doing. This is definitely sales is one of those really interesting jobs that I think is very similar to athletes, and it's very similar to entrepreneurs. It's why it is a coveted role, but it's a challenging role. But there's high payoff, not just from a compensation standpoint, just from freedom and flexibility, similar to an entrepreneur. If you build a business and continue to successfully grow that, it's sort of coveted. Hey, that entrepreneur, kind of a rock star. That's pretty cool.
Well, but the chance to control a lot of your sort of destiny on a day-to-day basis
exists there. Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, that freedom, I think.
Yeah,
we talk about it in sales quite a bit. Is even in the early stage, it's like, hey, you're an entry-level salesperson, or not entry-level, but you're, early in your career, you've been given this patch of accounts or a patch of territory, and be the CEO of that territory, right? But I'm sort of like you, is that for me, part of the attraction of sales throughout the years, I like to say on one hand, I was very fortunate to have this happen, but perhaps I contributed to making it happen. Is I was in situations where, as long as I performed at the high levels, I was in charge, right?
Yeah.
Of myself, my team. I report to a CEO, but it's pretty light touch if you're doing the job.
Yeah. And that's probably why a lot of successful salespeople actually don't venture off into starting their own businesses, because you don't need to. There isn't enough of that pain. The freedom and flexibility is intoxicating because we act like our own mini CEOs. And I'm a big advocate of this concept of intrapreneurship. So treat your company like a VC who's funding you to go out and be successful. And when you are successful, you're going to be rewarded. And you're going to be given the freedom and flexibility to operate your business. Why go out on the skinny branch and risk, having to think about all the complexities and the headaches that go into building a business? Let somebody else take care of that. Be your marketing engine, take care of health and benefits and payroll and all those things. And you just go out and execute on really the fun stuff.
Absolutely, the fun stuff. Yeah.
Challenging stuff. Sure. Absolutely. But fun if you can really think smart and strategic about your approach.
Yeah. In your case, you carry a big title, but you're fundamentally an individual contributor, right?
That's right.
And I think that's sort of, I knew so many people over the course of my career, people I'd worked for, peers and so on, that had that ambition to run teams and so on. And then after a while, usually about the same point in their careers as you're at right now, sort of 10, 15 years into it, said, no, I just want to sell.
Yep. Yeah, you sort of get beaten down by all the things of management. Not that there's anything wrong with management, but you get away, you get out of touch of what got us into sales in the first place, or what has kept us in sales. And so, I have been deliberate about being an individual contributor. My focus is I have a few milestones that I want to achieve as an individual contributor. I'd rather build a team from scratch that helps to fuel my mini business within a bigger business, rather than manage holistically a team. So I have been deliberate about that. And even though I have a VP title, I don't have anybody that reports to me. I have groups that I obviously work with.
Sure.
But nobody reports to me. It was very deliberate in using a VP title to, essentially escalate myself into these, really large strategic accounts.
Yeah, and there's nothing wrong with that. I don't consider that a title inflation. I think that's a worthwhile thing to have, because you're operating at that level.
Right.
But I was always sort of like you, is even though I was running and growing sales teams at startups, I'm the 0 to 50 million guy. That's where I came in. So we're gonna come to the beginning. We're gonna build this up, because especially with selling large stuff, like we were selling multi-million-dollar communication systems, I wanted to play. Even with my guys and the team I had, that was all the fun. I have to admit, if it got bigger than 3 handfuls of salespeople, it's like, no, let somebody else do it. I want to have the fun.
Yeah, I think we're very similar in our personalities and our approaches to these big deals. It's I think, for me, I don't want to speak for everyone, but for me, it is more fulfilling seeing that when you can go to one of these major brands, as we've done, and you're not selling a transaction, you're selling a transformation, and then 12 months later, look back and see that is available to the public. An example of that is a major airline that I pursued, that I was spending my own personal time on prior to me even reaching out to them.
You're flying on them, you mean?
I was flying on them.
Yes, you're subsidizing their business, yes?
Yes, exactly. And So I was, very relevant as one of their top tier customers. I just also happened to be in a position where I could help improve that customer experience. And so that was the approach that I took with this major airline. And honestly, just wrote an open letter to a handful of their leaders and their executives. And I laid out in a very, again, succinct way, hey, here's a memo, here's an open letter of why I think we should have a conversation. And it went from us targeting them to them ultimately pursuing us. And this was before we had SDR. So I kind of was full cycle sales on this and kind of customized my approach and made it very on point from my lens as a customer who's spending every week of his life on their planes. And 9 months later, we're landing a large 7-figure deal with them. And fast forward, this is late 2018, fast forward 12, 18 months to now, they are being able to utilize our platform during a very challenging time. And it's very fulfilling to actually see that many customers are saying, wow, I'm so grateful that this solution exists. And they're posting it irregardless that they know LivePerson is powering that. This is just customers saying how happy they are. It's very fulfilling to see that we're impacting real people's lives.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of what really keeps me going and really interested, that I know that I can come in and make an impact. And again, when you see that gives you the confidence to just keep going to the next one and go bigger and go bigger and go bigger.
Yeah, well, I think you sort of slipped this in there, but I think for people listening, especially if you're SaaS sellers, talking about a 7-figure SaaS deal, first contract.
Mm-hmm.
Not some, hey, let's get a $9,000 contract and see what we can grow it to.
Mm-hmm.
So what's sort of, in your perspective, what's sort of the key to say, okay, well, of course, there's going to be some evaluation of risk on the part of the customer in terms of, how big of a chunk they should start with.
Right.
How do you work with them? What's your skills, your talents you're using to say, yeah, let's look at the bigger picture and maybe we can start a little bit larger.
Yeah. So it does start with that premise of think transformation, not transactional, and knowing that that's going to take more time to close the deal. But also in the mindset that, hey, wherever you start with, that's going to be, whether it's a $250,000 deal or a $250 million deal, you're going to be perceived at that value. So you have to kind of be careful that you don't want to pigeonhole yourself into where we know a lot of these large brands are going to use the procurement, negotiation skills, use every variable against you to kind of keep you locked in there. But, our contracts are typically signed off by a C-level executive. Well, how do you get in front of a C-level executive? If you're responding to an RFP or you're doing an unsolicited bid, you need to show big numbers and you need to show big impact. So that was always a mindset that again, not necessarily learning it from any one specific person, other than just learning as I go along, that those are key elements that if you want to stand out, you have to be bold and you got to start with big numbers. So I think that's like premise number one, is keeping that in the back of your mindset and then having the confidence to be able to do that. And I think that takes putting yourself, similar to this concept of being an entrepreneur, you have to put yourself in their shoes of who you're targeting. And obviously you want to elevate yourself up the chain to the right executives who are thinking about enabling their North Star initiatives, not necessarily the end user.
Mm-hmm.
You certainly want to have good relationship with those end users. You don't want to burn certainly any bridges or dismiss anyone. But you do need to get to those leaders who are kind of thinking about, okay, we have really ambitious goals to increase our net promoter score or reduce operating expense by a large amount. How do you have a relevant conversation with them with confidence and show that there is truly a path forward using your services?
Well,
so those are the things that I think of.
Yeah, okay. And I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but one of the things you're really talking about here is I love the idea of being bold, right?
Yeah.
I remember days, similar type thing as pre-internet, as I was calling companies around the world, cold calling them from my phone in California. But yeah, to be able to capture the attention, you had to have a bold premise that you're putting forth. Otherwise, they're not going to pay attention to you. You're just another small vendor, right? Yeah, I don't have time for you. But as you said, something transformational, and that really became a key. But to have that transformational conversation, though, you have to have a level of business acumen to be able to have that. And this is a part that I think sellers really struggle with, right? Across the board, especially as people coming up in their career. So for you, what was the key? Is it? I look back on me. I started my career. My dad gave me the recommendation: read the Wall Street Journal every day. Yeah. And I did. It was the first thing I did when I got my first job. As I subscribed to the Wall Street Journal and just read about business. I literally had to read the physical paper, scan it, but go through the whole thing front to back every day, and read other books and so on. But that was really important. That really helped me learn about business as well as just being curious about it. But what was it for you?
I think writing. I think being a good communicator, obviously reading and just being well or articulate. These are the things that are really important. You don't have to know the ins and outs of your products like a solutions consultant would. I think it's more important to have good business conversations foremost. And so that's kind of the advice that I give a lot to sellers who are starting at a new company. You don't need to dive into the product and wait 90 days that you're
to onboard,
certified and onboard, and you know the ins and outs of your product. Go just go and have good business conversations. So,
but it assumes a certain level of sophistication, though, right? Yeah. That was the part I started driving at. Is I think this is the barrier. Is when you have Gartner and people reporting that 80% of CEOs or CEOs report that 80% of the sales calls they have are of no value.
Yeah.
What is that core knowledge set, core skill set that enables you to have those conversations? Besides the confidence to have them, because that it is intimidating when you're new to meet with the CEO of a big company.
Yeah, the diamond standard, and again, it doesn't have to be overly complicated. So a diamond standard for me that I try to uphold is know the customer experience better. Because I'm ultimately B to B to C. That's the solution I'm selling. So this is going to be different if you are B to B. But as that airline example that I gave, what gave me the bold approach to just write that open letter, and then tactically I could understand who's opening it, when it's being opened, and things like that. It was more important that one, I had the writing skills, and I was coming from a place that, hey, I know how to fix your problem because I'm the one receiving the problem. And I think that's a good approach, because you're best served to articulate those problems, and then knowing your solution well enough, not again to the 10th degree, but knowing it to a certain degree that you can solve for those business problems. That's how I did it. And again, for me, writing is kind of the tool on how I serve that up on a platter. So I kind of really scrutinize, hey, attention deficit disorder exists at the executive level, not for any other reason other than they are time starved.
Sure.
So if you're going to put something in front of them, can you grab their attention, and can you hold their attention for 3 to 5 minutes? And how can I be as impactful as possible in those 3 to 5 minutes with text on a screen? That was always kind of what I scrutinized, and I've just been drawn to writing. I love writing, and so I wanted to utilize those skills. That's kind of what has helped articulate that. And when I write, then it also helps me to then be better prepared when I speak. So I love just writing, and then that then forms my point of view on how I present and how I talk on a discovery call and so forth. So for me, it was to ultimately answer your question. It's writing. That's how I gained the business acumen, and I think has helped land these really large deals.
Well, I think it's a great insight, because as somebody who's writes quite a bit myself, written some books and so on, is even after having been in sales for forever, every time I write, I understand something better. Something I thought I knew and that I could maybe verbalize. When you have to write it, it forces you to really say, okay, I really do understand this. And
That's
so
exactly
to your
right.
point, I think when you're talking about preparing for these conversations is, if you can be coherent on a piece of paper and compelling on a piece of paper on a screen, it's a big leg up to have a good conversation with somebody then.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's a great tip. So let me, some bits and bytes about, these deals you work on. Average length of sales cycle, 7-figure deal for you. Average length of sales cycle.
Yeah, it's anywhere from 6 months to 18 months. And, obviously my pursuit as a business operator is how do we shorten that?
Sure.
But for now, I mean, these are, massive companies. So it takes time. It's not so much a selling problem, it's a buying problem.
It's always a buying problem.
Exactly.
Yeah. I mean, well, because you think about it from the buyer's perspective, and we talked about this on the show many, many times, is they don't do this very often. So it's not like they have a written process that they follow to procure conversational commerce platform from LivePerson.
Right.
They don't.
Right.
So how do you help them sort of map that out?
Yeah. So it's starting with someone who's going to be a good recipient of that. So we know that we can make a big impact, for instance, at leaders of a contact center. It's a good beachhead for us. It's a good starting point. But for us, that's just a starting point. So again, it kind of comes back to then, how do you articulate, hey, I can create a hero moment for you in the contact center? One, again, empathize and humanize. I understand what your life is like. This is what we've seen with others. Does this seem true in your life? And 99% of the time, it's consistent. And then using data, using facts, using stories to relay those facts. Here's how we get started. But this is one component of the full transformation of 4 components. If we start with conversational care, your leaders are going to lean into what you're doing there because you've shown success in a relatively short amount of time. And typically for us, it's 100 days. That's going to lead to conversational selling or digital ordering, dependent on the business, digital reservations if you're a travel business. That can lead to conversational marketing, how you rethink your advertising to be more effective through two-way dialogue and using automation to then, wow, this is great for our customers. Why aren't we adopting this frictionless type of experience internally and using this type of technology for human resources or how we communicate over our intranet? Can we make that more conversational and use AI and bots and automation to make it more efficient? And so that's like the full picture that we try to paint. But then without, I hate when people use this term, but it is true, without boiling the ocean.
Right?
Yeah. Where do we start? And again, that starting point shouldn't be super tiny. That starting point should still be big because everything that we put in front of our customers is validated by a true business case, and there's an ROI. So every dollar you invest in us, we can show a return on it. And here's what that looks like. And we can defend that, again, with facts and data. So that's where we start. And we start big enough to make an impact. And then that's the momentum for even larger 7-8-figure deals from that original 7-figure or 8-figure deal.
So another question, maybe you've never been asked before, but sort of putting things in context, because really what you're talking about is everything is you don't need to have detailed knowledge of the product, but you need to understand the context that it's used in and be able to relate that in the context of the buyer. Is let's say for a 7-figure deal, is how many conversations, phone, in person, whatever, how many conversations do you think it takes you to get a deal from first conversation to close?
Yeah, well, about 15 to 20. And again, that's probably about 5 or 6 in-person meetings.
Mm-hmm.
And the rest web or phone calls, 15 to 20. And again, trying to dial that down even further. Of how can we be even more efficient? That's my constant quest, and that's
Sure.
kind of the fun stuff. But some of the deals that I was mentioning, and it's about 20 meaningful, not little check-in emails, or I'm not even really counting
conversations.
Emails. Yep.
So, I think it's really important for sellers who are listening to this to think about, because chances are, if you're selling even something that's relatively transactional, maybe it's a 5-figure deal, maybe 6,
mm-hmm.
you're probably having almost as many conversations as Brandon's having. And I would tell the story too about selling, $10 million satellite communication systems with 5 conversations,
mm-hmm.
One in-person visit, and so on. It's just,
mm-hmm.
you can be more efficient and effective. And
mm-hmm.
so you just shouldn't give in to this idea that, big deal, we got to be on top of them. We got to, blanket these people with communications and so on. It's like, no. Stop here. Right?
Yep. That's, I think, an excellent point, because it kind of goes back to what I was saying earlier. Where you start is sort of where the company perceives you. All right. So if it's $250,000 deal, $25,000 deal, it's almost harder, almost to get even those deals done than it is the big transformations. Because again, the bigger the number, sort of the more you're escalating, and the more empowered those types of leaders and executives are to push this through once you've connected the dots and everything's sort of clicking in place. So it's almost easier in some regards there. So yeah, I agree with you. The audience shouldn't be put off that, oh my gosh, these massive multi-figure deals are so much more work. It's not necessarily the case. You just have to be confident, be bold, be smart about, and very strategic about your approach.
Okay, well, that's going to lead to my last question of our conversation here today, which is, the term sales enablement's used a lot these days,
mm-hmm.
and I think it's used in too narrow a function. So part of the function of this show is we're trying to broaden the definition of that, because I think a good chunk of sales enablement is really self-enablement, right? So question for you is, you've talked about your writing, but in addition to your writing, what's your personal development plan, right? To take you where you want to go? What are you investing in these days?
Yeah, so I'm investing a lot in, operating like how a world-class athlete would operate, bringing that into sales. I think what's often overlooked and missed by a lot of top sellers is how you sleep, how you eat, how you exercise, even your mental preparedness, your mental well-being. All of those need to factor in, because for some it's going to be the micro gains, the marginal gains. For others, that could be the difference between missing quota to surpassing quota. When you put a concerted effort into that holistic approach to what makes a natural seller, because ultimately there's like 5 things, right, that you're trying to balance. Everybody's trying to balance, but time, energy, motivation, prioritizing your account list, and focusing on the work. And there are so many factors that can disrupt that. Of you taking on meetings that maybe you shouldn't take on. So that's eating into your time, your energy levels. Are you going out and having drinks at night? Or are you, again, behaving like how a world-class athlete would do, is like getting to bed at a proper time and getting proper rest, so you're waking up refreshed and doing that consistently? Are you eating well and exercising well? That's further fueling that energy. And that plays into motivation. Are you motivated to actually do good work every single day? And then using data and resources to prioritize your account list. Why should you focus on that account versus this one? What's telling you to do that? So being smart and strategic there, and then ultimately blocking off your time and not being afraid to do that, so that you can just focus on good work, not multitasking and scrambling around, but being very concerted around, okay, if I put in this effort, I know it's going to return X.
Right.
So,
well, and you also are investing your own money in your improvement. I mean, this is something that it's a message I talk about quite a bit. I harp on is it's sometimes sellers, they look at, okay, well, I get this coaching, I get this training occasionally from the company, and they look at it like an entitlement.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of saying, well, it's not an entitlement. I gotta add to that if I really want to create some value out of that. So what are some of the things that you do where you're actually spending some of your own money?
Yeah. So, I mean, you're not cheap. You're well worth your time, though, Andy. So, I mean, I personally pay to work and get coaching and advice from you, which is very worthwhile. I also have worked with other coaches who, in other domains where I feel like I want to improve. So, kind of talking about mental, the mental side of thing. I've struggled with confidence even after success. How do I maintain that?
Sure, the whole imposter syndrome.
Yeah, exactly. Working through that imposter syndrome. That was exactly what I worked with.
We've all had it.
Yeah. And then even, improving, the big muscle that we have to use, the big organ that we have to use up here, the brain, using science-based approaches to improving that, to even things like, utilizing wearables, which is Whoop.
I've got my watch. Yeah. Everything's tracked.
Yeah. And I know we've had conversations about this, but I think wouldn't it be really neat if as a sales organization, we're operating more like a high performing professional world-class sports team.
Yep.
Yeah. And you've got the mental coach, you've got the nutrition coach, you've got all these factors, and you've got systems in place so that you can show up. And I know you can relate to you have a Peloton. I'm using something called Zwift for the indoor cycling while we're at home. And I was just thinking to myself the other day, I was doing a virtual race on Zwift. You hook up your bike, and so this doesn't get lost on some of the people in your audience, but you hook up your physical bike to what's called a smart trainer. So it kind of understands, hey, this is the
terrain you're riding on. Yeah.
Terrain you're riding on, and it's then virtualized on my iPad. And so I can go and immerse myself with real other cyclists in a world. And so if I'm
multiplayer game.
Yeah. And I was thinking to myself, well, that's really powerful stuff, right? For an hour of time, if I'm on a training ride or I'm on a race, I'm locked in there on that screen, and it's surfacing up real-time data that tells me to go faster or push harder or do this or do that. And so my actions are motivated by the real-time feedback. Yet we kind of have to do that as sellers on our own. We have all the different tabs open, and we're trying to collect data here and use that data. And I know we've talked about this, but it would be really powerful, I think, that, and I think we'll eventually get there, is why not have that Zwift-like experience, that portal where I could step in every day as a seller and know, hey, I've slept well or I haven't slept well, and that should dictate my behavior for the day. I should be getting real-time coaching feedback on those elements that I have to manage to be a good seller. And I'm almost just like operating in a game.
Sure.
I'm managing my sales career, my sales pipeline. So,
love it.
Yeah, all interesting stuff that I think will we'll see a reality over the next few years.
I agree. All right, well, Brandon, unfortunately got to jump, but fantastic. Talk to you as always. So if people want to contact you, how can they find you?
Yeah, you can find me on LinkedIn. Again, Brandon, last name is Fluharty, Fluharty. I'm very active on LinkedIn. My Twitter handle is @BrandonTechExec. Two great places to connect with me.
Excellent. All right, Brandon, thank you very much.
Thanks, Andy.
Okay, friends, that's it for this episode. First of all, I want to thank you for taking the time to listen. So grateful for your support of this show. And I want to thank Brandon Fluharty for sharing his story with us today. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to this podcast, Sales Enablement with Andy Paul, on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you listen to the podcast, and leave us a 5-star rating. You can do that all on your iPhone in less than a minute as soon as this podcast is over. My team and I would really appreciate it. So thank you so much. Until next time, I'm your host, Andy Paul. Good selling, everyone.